Hi, my name is Max, and my thesis is called More Friends More Often. Esteemed Australian songwriter Courtney Barnett once said, "Perhaps we should move out further. I guess it won't hurt us." Little did she know that her location could impact her social life dramatically. Friends, family, crushes, relationships. Socialization is one of the core needs of humanity, and as such, people make trips to meet their social needs. My research looked at social travel patterns in Melbourne and how where we live affects how and how often we socialize. Previous research on social travel has focused on demographics and relationships, and while insightful, has struggled with small sample sizes and other sampling challenges. Additionally, social trips have been hard to identify in large existing trip datasets. If only there was a large, detailed dataset which could represent people's travel behavior over an entire metropolitan area. Enter VISTA, the Victorian Integrated Survey of Travel and Activity. Using a dataset of 170,000 trips taken by 65,000 Melburnians between 2012 and 2018, I filtered out trips to social destinations such as friends' houses, concerts, restaurants, footy games, and more, searching for patterns in how often and how long people would travel to socialize. My research found that Courtney Barnett's null hypothesis was false. People living in the inner suburbs made 65% more social trips than those living in the outer suburbs, racking up an impressive 54 more social trips per year than the Melburnian average, while those living in outer suburbs made 19 less per year on average. I also found that while average distances to traveling to socialization increased from inner to middle to outer suburbs, travel time stayed fairly constant. Mode share for social trips is mostly similar to all trips. However, a shift from driving alone to becoming a car passenger was present, suggesting that travel time itself is seen as an opportunity for social interaction. Finally, only half of all social trips originated at home. These high levels of trip chaining show that socialization is woven into a complex travel pattern which should be accounted for in activity-based travel demand modeling. There are potential factors influencing these findings, such as self-selection and the inability to account for trips made by others to visit someone in your own home. And we should also be careful not to extrapolate to other geographical locations, as they may be limited in applicability in other metropolitan areas. However, my research adds significant qualitative findings to the field of social travel research, providing evidence that where you live affects how and how often you socialize. This quantitative research can be used to guide further development in Melbourne as the population continues to grow. So, in conclusion, Courtney, don't move out further. It just might ruin your social life.
Whenever I go to plan a public transport journey in Melbourne and I see that I have to transfer from the train to the bus to get where I'm going, I get a bit of a sinking feeling. What if the bus is late and I miss a connection? Or what if when I get off the train I can't find the bus stop? Transferring, which is the act of moving from one public transport service to another, is inherently inconvenient. It takes time and effort, and in Melbourne we tend to make it more difficult than it needs to be. I've studied the Level Crossing Removal Project. The LXRP, as it's known, has totally rebuilt 41 train stations in Melbourne. And it was my observation that these brand new transfer precincts were sometimes quite good, but also sometimes quite poor. And so I thought there was something interesting going on here. I've engaged with the theory of automobility, which is the idea that we've totally reorganised our society around the car in the post-war era. We've built the city to enable the free movement of cars, and we've also been socialised into this culture where driving is seen as good and normal and ubiquitous. So through qualitative interviews, I sought to answer two questions. The first was, how do the assumptions of automobility inform the planning of these new transfer precincts? And I found that political influences on the LXRP limit how transformative the project can be. So one key example of this is that there is an unofficial mandate that there be no net loss of car parking across the entire program. This is a political decision and it's rooted in automobility. It effectively limits how much space can be reallocated around transfer precincts to improve the interchange. The second question I sought to answer was, how do practitioners challenge or even reinforce automobility through the infrastructure planning process? I found that there are a group of planners who act as policy entrepreneurs, and these are people who can identify a window of opportunity and advocate for a preferred policy position. They do this through negotiation and by leveraging contacts that they might have. I also found that the LXRP is a pipeline of projects which allowed these people to practice and improve their negotiation skills over time. But of course, this is a messy and inconsistent process, and entrepreneurs are not always successful. The LXRP is not likely to change the entrenchment of automobility in Melbourne anytime soon, but it might have created a group of planners who can better influence infrastructure outcomes going into the future.
Hi everyone, I'm Cyrus. When you think about airports, you probably picture planes, terminals, and of course, travel. But what about the cities around them? Melbourne Airport isn't just a gateway to the world, it's becoming a major player in urban development. Melbourne Airport has introduced the airport city concept in the latest master plan, a vision for the airport to become a multifunctional hub. However, we don't know how this idea will be implemented or how it will integrate into the broader urban planning system. On top of that, airport planning in Australia is complex, facing challenges like governance and land use conflicts. Therefore, my research explores these governance and land use challenges that complicate the planning of Melbourne Airport and the surrounding area, as well as the implication of the airport city concept. I ask 3 key questions. 1. What governance challenge complicates airport planning? 2. What are the land use conflicts and what causes them? 3. How do key stakeholders perceive the airport city concept? To answer these, I have used GIS mapping to analyze land use patterns and conducted interviews with key stakeholders, including airport operator, state and local government, and consultancy. What I found is a highly fragmented governance system. Melbourne Airport sits on Commonwealth land, meaning that state and local government have limited control. The airport planning process is described as a black box with little transparency. Land use conflicts are also significant. Aircraft noise and urban encroachment create tension, and there are concerns that the non-aviation development on airport land clashes with the broader planning policies. Lastly, stakeholders are divided on the airport city concept. Many simply don't understand it, and there are concerns that it might disrupt the existing planning frameworks. So, what does it mean? I argue that Melbourne Airport is already becoming an airport city without formal recognition. But this uncoordinated evolution leads to further conflicts and missed opportunities. To address this, I propose 3 key recommendations. 1. Improve coordination and engagement between stakeholders. 2. Strengthen noise management and land use control to not only protect airport operation, but also enhance economic benefits. 3. Embrace the airport city concept through integrated approach to airport and urban planning. These steps will ensure Melbourne Airport grow not just as a major transport hub, but also as a driving force for regional economic development. My thesis contributes to airport planning, a topic that remains under-researched in Australian planning literature.
Look at these two images. Pretty similar, right? Both these groups are protesting, placards in hand, all with a similar message: save public housing. Though they look similar, these images were actually taken 4 years apart. First, at the former Walker Street public housing site, demolished in 2020. The second was at a community meeting where residents of public housing met with a political leader soon after getting an inquiry into the public housing renewal program early in March this year. Walker Street public housing in Northcote was among the first public housing estates to be demolished under the renewal program. That may mark the end of public housing in Victoria. When I saw this issue being discussed online, I wondered, do these discussions bear any fruit? I sought to find out how are citizens using media engagement to question and provide alternatives for the public housing renewal program. And not only this, did it really make a difference? What influence is this engagement having on the program of renewal? My research sought to find out how these communities use different forms of media. I looked at 12 news articles written about Walker Street from 2018 to 2024. I also examined Facebook posts from a community interest group during this period as well. In the case of print media, I found out that the writer has the power and consequently the ability to frame the narrative. Therefore, whether there would be any democratization of said power depended solely on their own goodwill. However, there was a marked increase in the platforming of alternative narratives when articles featured information about a documentary called Things Will Be Different. This is a film produced about the eviction of the final 2 residents at Walker Street. On the other hand, data from the Facebook post proved quite insightful. Out of all Facebook posts, more than 2/3 were made by a single individual. Yet this was a public group. Not very democratic, is it? However, due to the ability to comment and react, these posts always allowed room for debate and alternative opinions. I also observed that while the posts were about Walker Street, they spoke more broadly about the renewal program as a whole. This served as an invaluable peer education resource to citizens. They were able and willing to challenge their local MP online. However, the challenges with technology at times hindered this type of participation. Finally, they were able to organize for action offline. They met for information sessions, protests, events, and even invited people to watch their film. The culmination of their efforts and those of many more is what eventually contributed to the inquiry by Parliament. So let's keep tweeting, posting, sharing, and participating in the causes we care about to whatever extent we are able. It really, really does make a difference.
When you think of trees in Melbourne, what comes to mind? Clean air, cooler streets, or comfortable parks? But have you sometimes felt that trees make areas feel less safe? Urban greening is currently a planning priority in many cities due to its massive health and environmental benefits. Yet, emerging research has explored the relationships between urban trees and crime. These studies show mixed findings. Some suggest trees could facilitate crime, while others argue trees could mitigate crimes. However, most of these studies focus on US and European cities, leaving a gap in understanding for Australian cities like Melbourne. The City of Melbourne has committed to increasing tree canopy cover from 22 to 40% by 2040 in its urban forest strategy. At the same time, the city has seen a significant rise in crime, making it an appealing case for studying the impacts of urban forests on public safety. My research focused on 2 questions. What are the relationships between urban trees and public safety regarding crime? What are the possible roles of urban forest strategies in impacting public safety? In my research, I conduct spatial correlations analysis through GIS and interview experts involved in the urban forest strategy within the city of Melbourne. My quantitative analysis shows a negative correlations between tree canopy and crime rates, suggesting that areas with more tree cover tend to have lower crime. The negative correlation is especially significant in parks and gardens. My interview findings provide insights into how trees planting could enhance public safety. Strategic placement, selections, and maintenance of trees could mitigate concerns argued in current research, which includes offering hiding spots and signals of lack security for potential criminals. In fact, well-maintained and designed urban forests improve natural surveillance, social interactions, and community cohesion, which may reduce crime by promoting human well-being and reducing aggressive behavior. While the City of Melbourne's urban greening considers public safety in general practice, there is a potential to further leverage it to address crime and public safety. My research suggests incorporating public safety considerations into urban forest spatial planning to better prioritize greening efforts, improving guidelines for tree placement and design, and expanding community greening programs to foster a sense of place and collective advocacies, which could help reduce crime. In conclusions, my research lays the foundation for understanding how urban forests impact public safety in Melbourne, and offers insights into incorporating safety considerations to make the cities both greener and safer. Thank you.
When I was 5 years old, I immigrated to Melbourne with my family, and we moved here. I grew up quite literally surrounded by golf. I love playing golf, but as an urban planning student, I also have a keen interest in the form and function of our cities. Golf courses are often central to land use debates because of the valuable space that they occupy and community demand for, as well as rights to, an equitable city. These conversations are often polarising, with residents either for or against the transformation of these spaces. However, as someone who feels on the fence in these debates, I can see the merits and shortcomings of both sides of this argument and know that a more nuanced discussion must be had. Repurposing golf courses is not a new thing. However, these developments can undervalue the social and environmental benefits that these spaces can offer in their current form. As planners considering land use change, we have a responsibility to acknowledge what can be lost just as much as what can be gained. Therefore, a question we should ask is, what are the social and environmental implications of repurposing Melbourne's public golf courses for alternative uses? Using GIS, I mapped 46 public golf courses across metropolitan Melbourne. Collectively, these cover an area equivalent to 10.5 times the Melbourne CBD grid. Using scenario planning, I then assessed 4 possible, but not necessarily probable, land use futures for these spaces. These range from keeping all existing golf courses in their current form to completely repurposing them for housing. These scenarios demonstrate their development potential, able to support up to 87,000 new dwellings under a higher density scenario, or create up to an additional 940 hectares of public parkland, also acknowledging how this would fit within Melbourne's existing green space network. However, at the same time, my analysis considers this potential in the context of other factors like opportunities to play golf, as well as adverse amenity impacts that might be associated with this kind of change, like green gentrification. In fact, even in a business as usual scenario, where all golf courses remain, external variables like population growth and urban heat can undermine overall social equity and must be addressed through other means. My thesis draws attention to land use friction in Melbourne and can provide practitioners with a stronger evidence base for assessing the conversion of golf courses, offering improvements to the state government's existing planning guidelines. Tangibly, it identifies existing dwelling capacity at a site-specific level, providing valuable insights for local governments, particularly in response to the state government's recent housing targets. Finally, my research contributes to an emerging field called critical golf studies, blending sociodemography, environmental science, and planning for a more holistic investigation of golf and golf courses, both in Melbourne and more broadly.